And another brilliant few chapters of the Sumeru storyline is finished. This probably cements Sumeru as the faraway winner of Best Story in the Archon Saga. Now before I continue, I still haven't done the story quest yet, so characters like Nilu and Tignari are still quite underdeveloped for me. Sino in the Archon quest is already a complete character, so I look forward to his awful sense of humor that he hasn't shown in the main story. I swear, I'm gonna do that at some point. I also have a few other video ideas floating around, like just want to make a video on certain NPCs like Rahman. I really liked Rahman's role in the story, and I just want to spend more time focusing on him, like give him his own video. Right now, video output is still slow, but I'm trying to get better. Now, I'm going to review both Acts 3 and 4 together in this video because, unlike Acts 1 and 2, the stories are intrinsically connected and it feels more like one act than it does two. Not only that, if Act 3 was going to end somewhere, I would have preferred for Act 3 to end a bit earlier, like right before we headed out for the desert. Now speaking of Acts 3 and 4, I would just like to say one thing, and it is that I am so glad we are no longer going with the 3-act structure like in previous Archon quests. Like we knew it wasn't going to be enough for Inazuma, and indeed Inazuma was quite rushed because they had to follow the 3-act structure, and now here in Sumeru it is made plenty clear that it wouldn't have been enough here either. So now we are given more time for the writers to tell a complete story, and it has translated to a much better written story at the end of the day. And the fact that they have officially confirmed this by releasing a potentially 5-act structure means that we could expect really great things from Fontaine, for example, where they could even push it even further if they wanted to. Now, without further ado, let's talk about Acts 3 and 4. So, at the beginning, we kind of had a questionable plan to infiltrate the academia by exploiting one of its more emotionally vulnerable members, Sataria. She was there at the Sub-Zero's festival, so, yeah, got some bad feelings there. But regardless, we managed to successfully manipulate Sataria and convinced her to share some academia secrets until things went really downhill because Dottore heard all of it and sabotaged our plans. And it turns out he is the second Fatui Harbinger. Now, this came as a big surprise because almost everyone thought Capitano was the second, including me. Now, I had to go back and rewatch the scene multiple times to understand exactly what happened. It turns out Dottore had a wiretap into Sataria and then apprehended her, but not only that, he was also able to manipulate the Akasha to deposit memories into people, making them effectively brainwashed. To be fair, it was just elaborate hallucinations, but without Nahita's help, it wouldn't have made a difference to us. He also seems to be in control of the academia, which is really bad. But it doesn't end quite there because Nahita had to out herself to cancel the brainwashing, ruining our element of surprise, and then we had to leave the scene. So there's a lot of things I want to say, but I'll just go one by one. Dottore being the second Harbinger was very unexpected. Before this point, we were defeated by Scaramouche, the 6th Harbinger, and now one of our main enemies is at the top of the Harbinger ranks. I'm not sure if we'll fight Dottore in Sumeru. It could be a situation where Dottore's plans fails, but he just retreats, and instead we'll fight Scaramouche only, who is pretty much a confirmed boss fight. This also means, even if we didn't care about civilian casualties and somehow managed to get a clean 1v1 fight on Dottore, it's very doubtful we could win. I don't think we're strong enough yet to beat the 2nd ranked Harbinger when last chapter we were knocked out by the 6th ranked Harbinger and had a competitive fight with the 8th Harbinger. Maybe by Fontaine we'll be able to defeat any Harbinger besides Piero, who I still think is a very, very big step above the rest. Alright, just a little side note here. I'm assuming that the Harbingers are somewhat separated by strength with rank because Yai Miko implied that the Balladeer was above Signora and stronger because of her rank. So Dottore should be far stronger than any Harbinger we've met thus far. Also, some people say that it's suspicious that Paimon knew he was the 2nd Harbinger, despite nobody telling her that. It is suspicious, but I don't know if this is implying something bigger about Paimon, which is too big of a topic for me to dive into, so I'll leave it for now. Alright, side note over. Now, another thing is, I didn't recognize it at the time, but the situation has completely flipped, and we were pretty much screwed at that point. Nahida in Catherine's body couldn't fight well, and she can't counter Dottoro's sabotage without outing herself and putting herself and Catherine in danger. Dottore effectively also has unlimited funding to turn the Eremites against us, like the Eremites were hunting down Dunyazad. Every person in Sumeru who has an Akasha effectively becomes a liability. Basically, the entire nation has been turned against us. We've officially become fugitives. Being inside the capital city is now dangerous because the enemy has been alerted to our presence and they have complete control of the place. Anywhere where Akashas are used is a danger, and to a lesser extent, anywhere with Eremites is a risk because you never know if we're being tracked, and if some of them are hired to eliminate us. Throughout this act itself, I don't think they did the best job of portraying that feeling. It took me a while before I realized how serious it was. But this might just be the biggest problem with Acts 3 and 4, which means it'll only get better from here. There's not many people we could have gone to be honest. Alhaitham's whereabouts were completely unknown. Dunyazad and Nilu were in the capital and most likely would have had the Akasha equipped. Dia left a while ago, so time to go to Tignari. We had a quick conversation with Kole, who told us Tignari left his post to go to Pardistii, so already the situation is developing quickly. This conversation felt really sad, like we just ran into Dottore, and then we go to Kole immediately after, and it turns out her condition is worsening. It's a reminder that our friends' lives depend upon our mission. A pretty painful one too, because if you followed my previous reviews, you know that I'm a huge fan of Kole. Go to Pardistii, and we reunited with Nahida once again. Which, well, is going to be pretty short-lived, but still. We first found Hypatia, who claimed to have connected with the Divine. Now, she did promise to help us understand the Irminsul vision from Act 1, and funnily enough, we did get the answer. I was ranting about the Inazuma-looking domain inside the dream. With Scaramouche's backstory and his memories inside the Irminsul, now it all makes sense. It didn't occur to me that Scaramouche would be in Sumeru, which was probably a brain fart for me. Now, I don't really want to go too deep into Scaramouche's character, because a breakdown of him deserves its own video, preferably at the end of his character arc, when he becomes playable, which I'll make at some point. I swear, I really need to follow through with these things. But anyways, this backstory of his does paint him in a dramatically new light than before. He's mostly been this evil guy who did evil things and permanently altered the lives of some of our beloved characters. He did irreparable damage to the Kaedehara clan, sabotaged the Raiden Gokuden, was responsible for the Delusion Arms deal which killed Tepe, and then there's Irreconciled Stars. Guys, this is why I never judge characters without knowing the full picture. I didn't lash out against Raiden Shogun in the first half of Inazuma, and I never lashed out against Scaramouche. Sure, they're still evil even with explanations, but they're no longer evil for the sake of being evil. Okay, so Scaramouche video win. Maybe when it becomes playable. So then, as soon as we walked out, we got ambushed again. Great. A lot of stuff happens here. Nahida and Traveler switch places. Tignari saved us. We talked to Tignari. Oh, there's a lot to unpack here. First, let's get to the topic of Hypatia out of the way. Yes, Hypatia, you did indeed go mad, but it was different. She connected with the consciousness of a new god being born. This does slightly nudge the future into a scenario where Scara succeeds and becomes a god, but I doubt it will last very long. Creating an artificial god has been a goal of the Abyss Order for a long time. I don't think such a powerful being will be put into the story that early. Tignari also wanted to help her with her madness, lest she be seized by the Matra and sent to Aru village. You have to rewatch the story to understand the weight of this, because in Act 4 we learn about the village keepers and just how sad their fates really were. Being looked down upon by the radicals, being kidnapped and exploited for political goals, and being exiled there because they had nowhere left to go. The last we saw Hypatia was asking if she lost her mind and then walked into the background. Now that we know about the story of the Mad Scholars, it feels satisfying to see that she managed to avoid this fate. These are things you tend to only realize on a second playthrough, so I quite enjoyed it. So the next thing is, we lost contact with Nahida, and now we have to go to the desert to continue our journey. This is where I think the story reaches its second chapter, and we've lost all our gains in Sumeru, and now need to go into exile to plan a counterattack. Nowhere in the forests of Sumeru is safe. The desert might as well be its own separate nation. The stakes just got much higher. We need to save the Dendro Archon, Kole, everyone. Fix the Irminsul to deal with the Withering and the Elazar, kick the Fatui out of Sumeru, and depose the ruling class sages who have a stranglehold on the people of Sumeru. Tignari will stay behind. Although he had a nice moment here, it seems as though his time has yet to come. Kole at this point, I'm not sure anymore if she'll be an important factor to our fight against the Academia. She might just end up being saved, and then we tell her the story of how it happened afterwards. Her time to shine may come after the Archon quest, where she is fully cured and healthy, and then maybe she'll finally reunite with Amber. Who knows? As we go to the desert, our experience with it and its people thus far has not been that positive. The land is dangerous and unforgiving, the people are downtrodden and subjected to a high degree of lawlessness and criminal activity, and religious extremists have been riled up and growing in numbers with manufactured rumors of their god's return. This is not like Watatsumi's Island, where a resistance against a powerful, oppressive political faction is clear-cut, and it's just them being the good guys fighting against the bad guys. Even if everyone hates the Academia, they still consider themselves enemies with each other. There's plenty of different sides with different motivations, feelings, and goals, and they all come to a head once we gather all the different anti-Academia factions together in the same place. Could you imagine what would have happened if the sandstorm didn't happen or if Candace didn't intervene? It would have been so much fun to see Dia, Al-Haytham, and Sino duke it out, but that would have been really bad for us in the long run. So instead, cooler heads prevailed, and Candace, the 4-star character, has completely subdued 3 5-star characters. Perhaps the coolest thing we've seen a 4-star character do. Congratulations, Candace. Okay, so if it wasn't made plenty clear outside, it is being focused on heavily during this little talk-it-out meeting. Just because characters are friends with the Traveler doesn't mean they were friends with each other. We didn't get this feeling in Inazuma. It felt like all opposition to the Vision Hunt Decree, the Resistance, the Yashiro Commission, and rogue actors like Beto and Kazuha, they lacked a certain uniqueness and flavor to their individual personalities, flavor that is really well implemented here. To quote Enviosity, we feel like we're the NPCs. Characters are talking to each other, they're forming unique relationship and dynamics with each other, without the MC involved. Their own motivations, goals, and personalities are made well known. Everyone felt important. This wasn't just the Traveler doing everything and the other guy supporting them, no. Many times later in this Archon quest, we were a side character in someone else's moment. Like, all these guys will get their cool moments. Heck, even Ramon, an NPC that's going to be introduced in the middle of Act 4, had a little moment of development dedicated just for him. Again, from the Inazuma Archon quest, we did not get anywhere near the quality of character development from the playable characters there. Like, I don't really even think I have to explain this, so to save time, I won't. So Act 3 ends a little shortly after this, which then leads us to Act 4, which, if I haven't mentioned this already, well, actually, I changed my mind. Act 4 is my most favorite Archon quest out of them all. It's even better than the Samsara chapter, for me. I changed my mind like mid-video, so... Anyways, Act 4. There's so much juicy stuff in this one. We got revelations about the origins of canon knowledge. We've seen the contrast between Al-Haytham and Sino's personality in the way they talk to villagers. Tia had a lot of hidden connections and was doing her own thing behind the scenes. And the Scholar's Caravan was ambushed by Ramon's gang. Then there was the revelation from the priest flashback in Deshret's underground shrine. There was a lot of moving parts here, and in the end, they tied together pretty nicely. This is where I go a bit out of order and just go around the different parts. First, Al-Haytham showed quite a bit about himself during this section. He acted alone for a bit, which reflects a bit on his personality, but he's also shown that he knows how to talk to people. In Acts 1 and 3, we just get a smart, kind of manipulative and perceptive dude who is sometimes helpful, but is also super competent and a very sharp talker. Here we get some of his softer side. He kind of throws some shade at Sino's personality for being overpowering and intimidating, while he knew how to gain people's trust and takes the effort to understand their position. Of course, when he reveals he was tasked to investigate the Traveler, he had all the tools to succeed. Al-Haytham could have easily outwitted the Traveler and manipulated them, and even if he didn't do that, it was difficult to trust him. Showing this more caring and understanding side of Al-Haytham made him a more complex and interesting character. While he's not exactly pure-hearted and willing to go out of his way to save people like he mentioned in the abandoned hospital, his philosophy overall is pretty compatible with our goals, which makes him a great ally. Now, Candace, I think, was relatively underutilized. Unless the final act will come back to our village in some point, this is probably as much as we'll get. She fought off the sandstorm monsters, gave exposition, forced Sino, Al-Haytham, and Dia to negotiate peacefully, did some painful interrogation off-screen, and brought snacks. For some stuff we did in Aru Village, she could have played a more active role. It's still not bad per se, but she is unlikely to get much more focus when the story shifts back to the academia. Now, Sino. Sino might have gotten low-key the most under-the-radar character development that I've seen out of all the characters. No, I haven't played a story quest yet, and I know he does some cool things like play card games and make awful jokes. Maybe the story quest has more development in store, but the Archon quest isn't bad either. We don't see many of Sino's friendlier qualities in the Archon quest, but he does get some room to reflect on himself. It started with him acknowledging Al-Haytham's side of the story in the Sandstorm meeting, then choosing to stay out of interrogations due to him realizing his intimidating nature, which, again, Al-Haytham pointed out. They started off as enemies, but slowly Sino came around to accept things, which was probably difficult for him, because he didn't seem like the kind of person who would have easily admitted that he was wrong, because of his super principled and strong-willed personality. Next was the mini-trader scene. The Academia's algorithm was fed every last piece of information about Sino to predict his moves, and it hurt the group greatly. In the end, Sino had to accept his exploitable character flaws, which, of course, given his prior demeanor, we didn't really expect him to do. The final scene at the shrine had him notice the priest, which we knew he was thinking about it. For all I know, this could be this in the Sino quest or Act 5, but nah. Yeah, he had an intriguing little developing side story going on, which we don't get this a lot in Genshin. At least not in this manner. Let me know if there is, though, in case I missed something. Lastly was Dia, who gave us some of the most important exposition. The Wall of Samiel was not merely to block sandstorms, but to keep the desert dwellers out. The Akasha even selectively excludes desert people from accessing its knowledge. Is this our first confirmed case of racism in Genshin? Desert dwellers are viewed as cheap labor. And you know what? The Eremites who attacked us also said that the Corvus of 30, the city guard, were paid scraps, suggesting that they are exploited and being paid less than their worth. Dia also demonstrated a high degree of awareness and intelligence here. And let's be honest, nearly all the Sumeru characters have shown to be way more intelligent and competent than their previous regional counterparts. It seems there's a lot more sides to her than meets the eye. Despite Al-Haytham getting a lot of shade for acting alone, Dia got away from being the most secretive, especially meeting with Rahman in secret. If I interpret the situation correctly, Rahman's group was the one who abducted the scholars. Either that or he was the one who intercepted the caravan. Regardless, Dia tried to negotiate her way into getting them back, but ultimately it failed. The confrontation was really intense. Isak almost blew it. I really thought this kid wouldn't cause trouble, but I guess it was too much to ask for. But it's no shortage of entertainment for us. Again, Al-Haytham and Sino display their differences in character. Sino would have simply chosen violence, while Al-Haytham was willing to risk himself to advance the situation. Dia, despite claiming to only care about Mora previously, could have easily allowed Al-Haytham to give himself up, but she stepped in and sacrificed her arm. Again, there's a lot of character-defining moments that show us how these characters contrast each other, something I really liked. And then, of course, we get a really cool cutscene, but there's really not much to comment on aside from how cool it was, so you can just go and watch it yourself again if you need to. Now, the next part is probably the highlight of the act. We get answers. Rahman, the leader of the negotiating group, followed us into the underground shrine, and his entire world was shattered. Sino was in contemplation for the memory of what could be his ancestor, and the truth, all this conflict between children of the forest and the desert was a lie all along. They were never enemies, but it certainly benefits some people in power to trick people into thinking they were enemies. There's also this debate raging on about whether Rukkhadevata is really Kusanali, because the scene here, that happens isn't really the birth of Kusanali. I'm just going to wait for more information and refrain from commenting for now. Anyways, this moment is what humanizes Ramon and turns him from generic bad guy NPC into a relatable and reliable ally. The fact that we got such a human element from someone we didn't really look back twice on is a pretty huge deal. His reaction was realistic, and you really felt bad for him because he has pretty much lost all meaning to his life. Everything he knew was a lie, and he has to ideologically start over. I want to make a video about Ramon and just NPCs in general, so I'll keep this part short. He might low-key be one of the best NPCs in the game after the events of Act 4. So now, with Ramon allied to us, the sages spilled the beans and revealed their motivations. They were always lost without a god of wisdom, abandoned Kusanali because she wasn't wise like Rukkhadevata, and then Dottore approached them with an offer to create their own god of wisdom. It seems the sages really need some soul searching to do, but before we do that, we need to stop Dottore and Scaramouche, which means until then, the sages are our enemies. Well, I still hate them, so even after that, their ranks do need to be purged. At the very end, it seems that all conflicts, all grievances, all secrets have been resolved and led to one place. We've all gotten the information we needed. We have allies. We've established trust and solidarity with each other. This is the feeling I should have gotten out of the resistance in Inazuma. It's such a grand feeling. Everything builds up to this moment for us to launch a grand offensive on the Academia. There is only one enemy, and we are all united against it. It's such an amazing ending to an overall amazing arc so far. And now that we've got past Act 2 and confirmed the act structure changes, I'm no longer worried about the story writing for Act 5 nor the pacing, so it's super exciting. So if you made it to the video, well, congratulations. If you've been following my channel for a bit of time, you'd know that I also failed to release this video on time. It's super late. And I said I'd release it earlier before the end of the patch after 3.0, but I failed to do that, so I guess I shouldn't make promises anymore. Things have been pretty hard for me to release new stuff. I've been focused on a lot of other stuff in life right now, and it's gonna prepare me to be able to release videos better because I'm working on like basic life skills and stuff. So yeah, that's a little update there. I don't think I can promise to like release anything on time anymore, but I have a whole bunch of projects lined up, and well, if they come out, then great. It means I've done what I was supposed to do. But anyways, so I don't think I'm ready to commit to a full-time YouTube channel just yet. I've been trying to do that this whole time, but it doesn't seem like the time has come. So just look forward to new videos coming out, whenever they may be. And yeah, I'll try to slowly work my way towards more consistent videos and better quality videos. So yeah, I'm really sorry about the inconvenience. So but hey, I hope you enjoyed this one, and see y'all next time.